Friends, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you in this service of celebration and acknowledgement of a week of Christian unity here within the Canadian context. In the text from John 15 that was read earlier, Jesus shared his dream for those whom he called his friends. A dream where his friends were united in their love for God and for each other. Martin Luther King Jr. speaks of this dream of Jesus as the creation of the beloved community. Jesus envisioned a community where those he called friends or who were followers of his life and ministry would be characterized by a quality of love, compassion, and justice. A love that was rooted in the relationship that existed between Jesus and God the Father. The significant assumption underlying Jesus' dream was a realization that the whole enterprise of God's character and commitment needed the authenticity and integrity of the followers of Jesus. By this, by your love, will they know that you follow me, and by your love will they know that I am who I said I will be. The love which Jesus lived and demonstrated and has invited his friends to emulate was a love that recognized the dignity and value of all. It had a fierce protective energy over people who are marginalized and victimized by oppressive religious systems. And it was a love that was self-given even to the point of death. Jesus made it quite clear that there were two fundamental requirements to live into the reality of that love. The first was to abide in Jesus in order to be connected to the life forces of Jesus. And the second was to keep his commandment, to love God, to love self, and to love the neighbor. Our unity comes from our commitment to show up in the world as people who love and care, as people who are more concerned about God's agenda at transformation and redemption, more than our own need for theological accuracy and moral certitude. I must confess that it is difficult for me to think about the unity of the church, particularly at this time in our history. The reality that COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated on unmask the systemic injustices embedded in a society that claims to be Christian. The reality that our historic colonial practices continue to traumatize and do violence to indigenous peoples and people of African descent. The cries of Rachel, weeping for her children and will not and cannot be comforted, stands in sharp contrast to our collective imaginations of being followers of Jesus Christ. Our collective complicity in the trauma and victimization is evidence that we have not understood the invitation of Jesus to be a beloved community. It seems to me that the dream of Jesus, expressed in John 15 and further in John's Gospel in John chapter 17, demands of us at this time a season of lamenting. We need to lament the truth that our systems of denominational fragmentation continues to be a part of a colonial legacy and to impact the lives of marginalized communities. We need to lament that our practices of creating borders stand in the way of peoples from every tribe and nation streaming into the New Jerusalem, as we read in Revelation. And we need to lament that our desires for purity continues to wreak havoc and do violence to people Jesus calls his friends. So as we gather this afternoon to think about our unity, I would invite us into a time of lamenting, knowing that we do not lament in despair, but we lament in hope that God will hear the cries of our hearts and bring healing and draw us closer to becoming the beloved community. May it be so.